Hey, folks. Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. And let's start with this. Israel just made, in the past 48 hours, a strategic decision which may eventually end up saving tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of lives. I'm talking about these past 48 hours and Israel's literal destruction of Syria's military. Some 80% reportedly, we've got the numbers. I'm about to break them down for you. Some 80% of Bashar al Assad's military has been destroyed by Israel over the past 48 hours since basically Islamic jihadists roared out of northwestern Syria and took control in Damascus, Aleppo, Homs, Hama. Assad fled. He's living in exile in Moscow right now under the watchful eye of Vladimir Putin. And all of that happened as the military that Assad, with the help of others like Iran, had built up over the decades, remained in Syria. We're talking missiles. We're talking chemical weapon stockpiles. We're talking an Air Force. We're talking a Navy. Outdated, yes, the Navy and the Air Force, but they could be dangerous nonetheless, not only to threaten Israel, but to threaten Syrians, Syrian minorities who will now be living under this, apparently what looks like, at least for now, will be an Islamic regime, at least in chunks of the country. There's various factions, the Kurds in the northeast, more moderate rebel groups supposedly in the south of Syria. But in the heartland, in the four largest cities, it is certainly Islamic jihadists. Who's to say they wouldn't have used advanced military hardware to target their own people, just as Assad did before them? That they wouldn't target the Kurds, Christians, more moderate Arabs, the Druze, all those minority groups in Syria. So Israel did not only itself a favor, but Syrians a favor by destroying, the Air Force, the naval fleet, chemical weapon stockpiles, all in the past 48 hours. I'm going to break it down more, but what I said at the top was not an exaggeration. Saved tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives by doing this. How so? Well, number one, what if these jihadis use them on their own people, killed thousands upon thousands in Syria? Number two, what if they use them against Israel? Could have potentially launched missiles, chemical weapons at Israel, killed many. And number three, and we talked about this on yesterday's live stream, what if they use some of this military hardware to flood out of Syria into places like Lebanon, into Iraq, into Jordan, maybe even beyond? So you could have averted, if you're Israel, in your wisdom and your foresight and your boldness here in the past 48 hours, you quite possibly averted another major regional war. Because are you telling me these jihadis, once they got their hands on advanced military hardware, wouldn't have used them? It's basically what Israel has done since Saturday, since Assad fell and the jihadis took power in Damascus. Israel has done what the Biden administration should have done amid that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, August 2021. Instead, they left behind advanced U.S. military hardware into the hands of Islamic jihadists, the Taliban. Well, Israel wisely did not do that. And they've acted quickly and decisively here. And let's break down the numbers for you a little bit, folks. 1 second. I want to read this from the Times of Israel. They've got the details. In a historic campaign across Syria, the IDF says it destroyed 80% of the Assad regime's military. So what these jihadis are left with apparently seems to be a lot of pickup trucks, etc. God willing. But that's basically what ISIS had, just a warning here and a reminder, basically what ISIS had 10 years ago, 2013, 14, 15, they roared across Syria and Iraq and seized 58,000 square miles of territory, an area the size of Great Britain, as they established that mini caliphate. So never say never, needless to say, and these jihadi rebels have momentum right now, but denying them access to fighter jets, to a naval fleet, to chemical weapons, ballistic missiles is obviously a very big deal. And by the way, should have mentioned this yesterday, mention it now. You know that Russia still has a military base and a naval base in Syria near the Mediterranean coast. The plot thickens. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But here are the numbers from the Times of Israel. Just reading this straight off my phone. That's why I'm looking down. Following a major 48-hour bombing campaign in Syria, the Israel Defense Forces on Tuesday, that's today, said they had destroyed most of the former Bashar al-Assad regime's strategic military capabilities in an effort to prevent advanced weaponry from falling into the hands of hostile elements. I'd say so. In a statement, the IDF said that its Air Force and Navy had carried out, get this, over 350 strikes against strategic targets in Syria since the fall of the Assad regime over the weekend, taking out, quote, most of the strategic weapons stockpiles in Syria. The Israeli military estimated that it had destroyed 70 to 80% of those capabilities, and the operation was dubbed Bashan Arrow within the military after the biblical name for the Golan Heights and southern Syria region. They obviously were most immediately impacted along those Israeli communities along the Golan, which they're staring across the border at Syria at the jihadis right now. The IDF released footage from the campaign during which it said over 320 targets were struck all across Syria, hundreds of Israeli fighter jets involved. They began late Saturday, these strikes, first taking out Syrian air defenses to give Israel, the Air Force, more freedom. Then wave after wave of airstrikes were carried out by the Israeli Air Force and drones. They hit Syrian air bases, weapons depots, weapon production sites in Damascus, Homs, Tartus, Latakia, and Palmyra, according to the IDF. And the military said the airstrikes also destroyed many long-range projectiles, Scud missiles, cruise missiles, coast-to-sea missiles, air defense missiles, fighter jets, helicopters, radars, tanks, hangars, and more, plus chemical weapons sites in Syria taken out. Then the Israeli Navy last night destroyed missile boats, naval vessels at the Latakia port. Wow. For many years, Syria was used as a thoroughfare for Iranian weapons, and they were routing them to Hezbollah and Lebanon, as we talk about a bunch here. So I say all that to say, wow, it's a new day in Syria, number one. And number two, just another punishing, crippling blow to the Iranian regime. If Iran, not only the jihadi rebels, but like Hayat al-Tahrir or Hayat Shams, HTS, if they had any designs on using those Assad weapons and Iran had any designs on them, that's out the window now, needless to say. So the weakening of the Iranian regime continues. I want to break this down more. And what's Russia going to do, by the way, about that air base and that base along the Mediterranean coast? And are we moving into an era? It seems to me, folks, the Middle East is obviously the world's darkest, most unstable and chaotic region, also its most strategic region. But it seems to me that we are moving into an era here where for the first time in a very long time, there may be some reason for optimism in the Middle East. What do you think? Let me know in the chat. We've got our watchmen and women on the wall here, feverishly chatting away, as always, the most educated audience on YouTube, I like to call them. But let me know what you think. Could this be a new era of sanity, relative calm in the Middle East? Remember, the big one here, the Iranian axis collapsing before our eyes, and Donald Trump taking office January 20th, under 6 weeks away now. Peace through strength is back. Let me know what you think. We're going to break it down in a minute. Before we do, quick reminder to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube. Click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Join the more than 1 million watchmen and women on the wall who are subscribers to this channel. Also, we've got another great partner today, and it's a partner we've been working with for years. You know them, Mer Panim. Now, I talked about those communities in northern Israel and along the Golan who have been profoundly affected by 14 months plus of war, nonstop war, and tens of thousands of Israelis displaced, refugees in their own land, essentially, as a result of Hezbollah and Hamas and these barrages. And now there are concerns about the jihadi rebels in Syria emerging and lurking along the Golan Heights. That's where Mer Panim comes in. Mer Panim is blessing people like farmers, business owners who have lost everything due to arson and rocket attacks, leaving them in debt in many cases, losing their loved ones in war. It's just been, since October 7th, it has been horrific for the people of Israel. Mayor Panim helps Israel's most vulnerable. We're talking Holocaust survivors. We're talking families of IDF soldiers. We're talking IDF soldiers themselves, families of reservists with their amazing soup kitchens, number one. Look, it's not just something on a street corner where you get a bowl of soup and they kick you out. No, folks, you've seen me at Mayor Panim's beautiful soup kitchens throughout Israel, serving Holocaust survivors, for instance. Great, high-quality food, love, tenderness, care. It's not just a meal and you're out of there. No, Mayor Panim looks after Israel's neediest and most vulnerable. They follow through. It is israelcharity.org. Israelcharity.org. Look, Hanukkah is right around the corner. Christmas is right around the corner. And you're looking for a time to give and to bless others. Mayor Panim is a great place to start and to fulfill the biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3 to bless the people of Israel. People ask me all the time, how can I help? We're giving you opportunities here on the newscast. We only work with organizations like Mayor Panim that have a purpose, and that purpose is to bless Israel and do God's work. That's it. That's why I've been partnering with Mayor Panim now for over 4 years. It is israelcharity.org. Again, Hanukkah is around the corner, and many in Israel are not going to have a very happy Hanukkah. They have loved ones who've been killed in war in the past 14 years. They're displaced. They haven't been home in 14 months. The list goes on. Folks, needless to say, you know this if you watch on a regular basis. This is the time of Israel's greatest need, and it's a time of great trouble. We hope great days lie ahead, as we're about to discuss, but in the meantime, israelcharity.org. Bless Mayor Panim and bless the people of Israel. Check them out. Okay, what do you think of this notion, which I don't think is far-fetched, that, look, on one hand, I've been saying the United States, I believe, just received a reprieve from God Almighty with the defeat of the radical left in this country, at least electorally, on November 5th, is Israel. And more broadly in the region, is the Middle East about to experience a reprieve of sorts. I say that in that the scourge of the region, and the world for that matter in many ways, the Iranian regime. We've been talking about the weakening, you can call it, in the past few days. Folks, I was talking about this before Assad fell, how vulnerable the Iranian regime is right now. Think about this grand strategy built up over decades. Hey, Hezbollah was created by Iran 42 years ago, 1982. And it all collapsed in a matter of weeks. Israel, over about a roughly 1 year period after October 7, 2023, crushed Hamas, which is now, look, still capable of causing damage, but in a more ragtag, guerrilla-style attack sort of way. Hamas, as we knew it, is gone, and it ain't coming back. But September 17th, circle the date on your calendar. September 17, 2024, is when Israel looked north and frankly looked east at Iran and said, we're through playing games. Operation exploded with Hamas crippled and no longer able to pitch in from the south when Israel went toe-to-toe with Hezbollah in the north. Israel said, now we can turn our attention to the much greater threat in the north. Iran's crown jewel, Hezbollah. And man, did they. Operation Exploding Pager, destroying the entire leadership, the military leadership, Nasrallah, his replacements, a ground invasion, destroying Hezbollah's tunnel network, terror tunnel network, foiling Hezbollah plans for a ground invasion of Israel and an October 7th style massacre. Hezbollah probably right now, we talk about 80% of Assad's military being destroyed in Syria. Hezbollah right now at maybe 30% capacity of what it was before September 17th. Once the IDF committed and went all in, it was curtains for Hezbollah, which always amazes me because Hezbollah had been built up in the minds of many. And look, I talked about it, that they were a formidable foe, at least on paper. 150,000 rockets, missiles pointed at every inch of Israel. tens of thousands of well-trained foot soldiers, the tunnel network, funding and training from Iran, all the rest. And they were part of a broader apparatus, terror apparatus, that Iranian ring of fire that surrounded Israel on all sides, that again was carefully constructed over decades by the Iranian regime. Now Gaza's done. Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, crushed, mostly. Hezbollah, a shell of its former self, in such bad condition in Lebanon that they could not come to the aid of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, which brings us to Syria. That's why Syria collapsed. Israel, and Benjamin Netanyahu said this on Sunday from the Golan Heights, the reason Assad collapsed is Israel. What Israel did to Hamas and Hezbollah made the collapse of Bashar al-Assad possible. Because, and I left out, what Israel has done and the heavy blows it's dealt to Iran over the past few months, including on October 26th. After, by the way, all of this, let's get this out of the way, folks. Helpful reminder. All of these heavy Israeli blows dealt to the Iranian axis came in response to being attacked in the first place by that same axis. October 7th, unprovoked unilateral attack by Hamas against Israel. The very next day, October 8th, unprovoked unilateral attacks launched by Hezbollah against Israel. Fast forward, April 2024, October 1st, 2024, Iran attacks Israel. Israel responds. Hamas, Hezbollah, Israel responded. So all of these entities signed their own death warrant when they unilaterally attacked Israel first. And Iran's licking its wounds over losing its entire air defense system that we know of in that October 26th Israeli counterstrike. Key term there, folks, counterstrike. So you have a defanged, weakened, and demoralized Iranian regime and a demoralized Hezbollah that were unable to answer the bell this time and help Assad. Same with Russia, bogged down in Ukraine. It wasn't 2015 when they bailed, the fall of 2015, when those three bailed Assad out, and he essentially prevailed in that Syrian civil war, at least for a few years. The Jihadi rebels in the northwest of Syria lie dormant for much of the past 4 years, and then, man, they saw their opportunity, and they exploded out of the northwest, and in 10 days, they seized Damascus, the very definition of a lightning blitzkrieg offensive. But now what does Iran do? And we discussed this yesterday. When we talk about an era, at least for a short time, an era of calm in the Middle East, we think of Trump coming into office. He comes into office at a time where Hamas and Hezbollah are crushed, no longer existential threats to Israel. Threats still, but not existential, and under control, defanged largely. Assad has fallen, who was an Iranian client state, and he allowed Syria to become a playground for the Iranian regime and terror groups. Now he's gone. And now, not only that, yes, jihadis have taken power for now, but they don't have Assad's military to back them up because Israel just destroyed it in the past 48 hours. I don't know that these jihadis will last long term, by the way. You have other Syrian rebel groups vying for supremacy. You have the Kurds. Although if the Kurds started making major moves, Turkey's going to move in. More on that in a minute. But we shall see. If these jihadis don't have any arms which they can use against Israel or others, then they're basically ineffectual there in Syria. My thought is they'll probably try to consolidate power at home first in Syria. They're preoccupied with that, but stranger things have happened. They feel like they have momentum right now. You get a fanatical leader, maybe this Mohammed al-Golani, the leader of HTS, who's trying to paint himself as a moderate. Maybe he has designs to move now because he's not a moderate. By the way, he's got a $10 million bounty on his head from the United States for his prior terrorist activities. Remember, HTS came out of Al-Qaeda. It's a terrorist group, and they now control Damascus. We'll see what happens there. But Hamas, Hezbollah pacified, Assad's military gone, Assad himself gone, Iran, no air defenses, demoralized. It seems to me that this is the perfect time, if you're Israel, perhaps in tandem with the U.S., to eliminate the greatest threat, greater than any in the region. What would that be? You guessed it, Iran's nuclear program. And I said this 2 months ago. When I saw Iran being weakened, I said, folks, 2025 will be the moment of truth for Iran's nuclear program. Because I saw these blows being dealt to Iran's proxies, and I saw the ring of fire collapsing. And once those air defenses were taken out on October 26th, I said, oh, wow, there goes Iran's insurance policy. They're totally exposed. Their nuclear sites, yes, I know they're deeply hardened under the ground, but Israel has used bunker busters to great effect in some of these strikes in Beirut. And the U.S. certainly has those kind of weapons. But once that happened on the 26th, I said, oh my gosh, they're wide open. On that night, overnight it happened, October 26, 2024, Israeli fighter jets operated with impunity in the skies above Iran. Hundreds of Israeli, at least 100 Israeli fighter jets participated in that operation, and they all returned to base, returned to Israel without a scratch. So Israel has a freeway, an open lane to strike those nuclear facilities. Iran knows this, and they know Trump is coming into office in 41 days. And when he gets in office, it's going to be maximum pressure once again on Iran, crippling. I don't know that the regime can survive it. And you've got a restless population in Iran where at least half of the Iranian people, probably much more, are fed up with this wicked, tyrannical regime that's ruined their lives for 45 years. It's a perfect storm against the Iranian regime, and they know it, and they're scared right now. Why do you think they wanted to assassinate Donald Trump in the months leading up to the election, the Iranian regime? And that was verified by the Biden administration, who said, look, Iran is trying to kill Trump and former Trump administration officials because they knew what was coming. I mean, it's like a 1-2 punch. Israel destroys the ring of fire, takes out the air defenses, and also Israel, remember, struck that secret nuclear research facility in Iran as well on October 26th. And now Trump's coming into office. So if you're Iran, and now you have jihadis in Syria, folks, expect the unexpected in today's Middle East. These jihadis could pull an ISIS and roar out of Syria across Iraq right to Iran's doorstep. If you're Iran, if you are the Ayatollahs, the only sure thing for you and for your survival as a regime, and for you, perhaps your survival individually, that you're not dragged into the streets and hung by the people, is the nuclear option. We know they're close, enriching uranium at near military grade levels. And people have compared Iran's nuclear program to the Cuban Missile Crisis in slow motion. A very apt description. This has been going on 25 years. I mean, longer than that even, but it's really gone into overdrive and become a crisis in the past 2 decades, roughly 2-3 decades. I think it all culminates in 2025, where if you're Israel, now's the time, especially with Trump in office. And if Trump doesn't do it in tandem with you, he at least steps back and lets you do it, unlike the Biden administration, and we can go on, which has, and let's think about this. Let me just say one more thing. Either Israel's going to hit him or Iran's going to try and break out fast. It's coming to a head. Because they're saying, if we get the bomb, what's the North Korean template? What did North Korea do? Kim Jong-un got the bomb, and now no one messes with North Korea. Now he's probably got 20 at least nuclear devices. And Iran saying it worked for him, it saved his regime, it'll work for us. Israel has other ideas, let's just say that. But think about this, consider this, and why I'm thanking God for the change of administration. It can't come fast enough. If Israel had followed the directives and the pleas of the Biden administration, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, would still be alive. Rafah would have never been entered. Israel would have never entered Lebanon, and Nasrallah would still be alive. They would have never bombed Beirut either, which means certainly Nasrallah, the Radwan force, they'd all still be alive. Number three, that means Bashar al-Assad would still be alive in control because Hezbollah would have been smashed. And number four, Iran would still have its air defense systems intact and that secret nuclear research facility because Israel would have never struck on October 26th. They did it over the wailing, the weeping, the gnashing of teeth, and the protest of the Biden-Harris administration every single time. This has been a tried and true principle for foreign policy for 50 years. Whatever Joe Biden says, do the opposite. And it worked for Israel once again. Joe Biden is wrong quite literally on everything when it comes to foreign policy. And Israel showed once again, don't listen to the guy. And look at what happened. Look at the gains they made and the incredible victories that were attained through God going ahead of them. So if you have Iran weakened and if the nuclear program's taken out, the regime may even fall. And what does that mean? The main menace in the region is knocked out. And its proxies are knocked out. They've been the menace for years. What comes next? Let's see what happens with the jihadis in Syria. Does a new threat arise? We certainly know Turkey, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. They're now the big dog in the Muslim world in terms of the second largest military in NATO, a NATO member nation, a radical ideologue in Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the helm. He's Muslim Brotherhood through and through. They're wielding these jihadis in Syria. They're willing to flex their muscle and get involved in everywhere from Libya to Azerbaijan. He's threatened Greece. He's threatened France. He's threatened Israel and to reconquer Jerusalem for the Ottoman Empire, which he would like to revive. Keep an eye on Turkey here. And look, Iran's down, but it's not out. Stranger things have happened. And if Russia ends that war with Ukraine, or if it ends when Trump comes to office, he's been talking about trying to establish some kind of peace treaty there. And maybe Russia turned its sights back to the Middle East once again. Maybe China does even more. China, look, remember, has a 25-year agreement with Iran, where Iran supplies China with cheap oil and gas, and China supplies Iran with weaponry, weapons know-how. So it's not like Iran's out of options. Its strategy has failed miserably, the Ring of Fire, but they're not out of options. And they're not out of allies when it comes to the Gathering Storm Coalition. That's what I call them: Iran, China, Russia, North Korea. But right now, they're in very bad shape, and it seems like a time where Israel and the United States and the free world should capitalize. Turkey is going to be ascendant and call a lot of shots now. What does this all mean prophetically? Isaiah 17, we've talked about past few days. Damascus, the book of Isaiah, chapter 17, verse 1 says, Damascus will become a ruinous heap. It will cease to be a city. Wow, that's number one. Eventually, are we seeing the birth pangs for that? Perhaps. And number two, we talk about the war of Gog and Magog. Funny name, I know, but it's in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. Everyone can pretty much agree. People vary on whether they think Russia will be involved. But everyone pretty much agrees that Turkey and Iran, yeah, they're definitely involved. How does it impact that? I'll leave you with that. Let's have a little bit of a chat there. Turkey, Iran, how does this affect, if at all, the weakening of Iran and the Iranian axis, the fall of Assad, the strengthening of Turkey, and Russia still a wild card? How does this affect that coming war of Gog and Magog? And it's going to come eventually. The Bible is very clear. Would love to get your thoughts. Hey, remember also, if you like what we're talking about here on YouTube, we've got a nightly show on TV, on TBN, the world's largest Christian television network. It's called Stakelbeck Tonight. Airs every night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time every weeknight. Be sure to check out Stakelbeck Tonight. Until tomorrow, thanks for joining us here. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here